Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos out in the virtual world. It's almost Shabbos. יום שישי הגיע והוא בד יוק בזמן, כמה שחיכיתי כבר בעצם למה שהוא מגיע, ואם פה אז זה סימן שלך עוד שבוע בשחת. יום שישי הגיע, יום שישי הגיע, Friday has arrived and it comes right on time. I've been waiting for something relaxing, and if it's here then that's a sign that another week has gone. Here comes the quiet. Yom Shishi Higia, Yom Shishi Higia, Friday is here, Shabbat is now approaching. Just a little warm-up for Shabbat. Our service officially begins on page 10. Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Al Harachaman Mishoch Avdach El Ritzona Yavutz Avdach Kimo Ayam Yishtachaveh Kabbalah officially starts on page 11, where roughly translated is, "Come on, y'all, let's go." Lechu niranina, lechu niranina, lechu niranina, l'Adonai. Lechu niranina, lechu niranina, lechu niranina, l'Adonai. Naria, naria, litzur yeshenu, nikrad mafana, litodai. Naria, naria, litzur yeshenu, biz mirod, nirialo. Lechu niranina, lechu niranina, lechu niranina, l'Adonai. Lechu niranina, lechu niranina, lechu niranina, l'Adonai. Ki el gadol Adonai melech gadol kol Elohim. Page 12 at the marker. Repeat after me. Arba'im shana akut bidor va'omar amto elevavhem v'hem lo yadu derachai. Together we sing Asher nishpati v'api im yevon El Menuchati. Page 13. Shiru l'Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, Kol ha'aretz, Shiru l'Adonai, Bacho Shemo, Basru miyom leyom Yeshuatu. Sapru bagoyim kevodom bechol ha'amim niflota ki gadol Adonai o mehula me'od norahu al kol Elohim ki kol Elohei hamim elilim Adonai Shamayim asa hod v'hadar lefanav oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho havu l'Adonai mishpachot amim havu l'Adonai kavod v'oz havu l'Adonai kevod shemo se'u ובואו לחצרותם. השתחוות לאדוני בהטות קודש. Again at the marker, page 14. ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ירם הים ומלואו. I can't hear you at home. Yalo Sadai. Kol asher bo. Az yiranenu. Kol atzei ya'ai. Livnei Adonai kiva. Kiva lishpot ha'aretz. Yishpot tevel b'tzedek. V'yamim be'emunato. Psalm 97. Cut to the chase of Psalm 97 on page 16. Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright. Zarua l'tzadik ulishvelev simcha. Or zarua l'tzadik ulishvelev simcha. Or zarua l'tzadik ulishvelev simcha. Ulishvelev simcha. לצדיק ולשווה לב שמחה, ולשווה לב שמחה. עוז הרוח לצדיק ולשווה לב שמחה, עוז הרוח לצדיק ולשווה לב שמחה. Sing to Adonai a new song, for Adonai has worked wonders. Page 17, Psalm 98. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה. הושיע לו ימינו וזרוע קודשו. Let's do it again. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה. הושיע לו ימינו וזרוע קודשו. Turn to page 18. We're going to read together in English. At the top of the page, here we go. Call out to Adonai, all the earth. Break out in joyful singing. Sing to Adonai to the music of the guitar. Guitar and voices making music together. With horns and shofar cries, trumpet the presence of the sovereign Adonai. Let the sea and all that's in it roar, the earth and all who inhabit it thunder. Let rivers clap hands while mountains sing in harmony, greeting Adonai who comes to judge the earth, judging the world with justice and the nations with truth. Livnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, ve'amim b'mesharim. Nice, nice. Psalm 99. Moses and Aaron, Moshe and Aaron, among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name, called to you, Adonai, and you answered them. Moshe and Aaron bechohana, Ushmuel b'korei shmo, Kori el Adonai v'ho yaneh b'amur anan yidaber alehem shamru edotav v'chod natan hamo. Adonai Eloheinu Ata Anitam El Nosei Haita Lahem V'nokem Al Alilotam. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehakodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki, ki, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehakodsho. Ki, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. I ask that we all rise, those that are present rise, for our Friday psalm. Mizmor LeDavid. Havu l'Adonai b'nei Eli, havu l'Adonai kevod va'od, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai v'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim. Adonai, Ba'akoach, Kol Adonai, Behadar, Kol Adonai, Shaber Arazim, Vayashaber Adonai, Arze Havanon, Vayakidem Kemo Egel, Levanon, Vesirion, Kemo Ven Remim, Kemo Ven Remim. Kol Adonai, Chotze Lavodesh, Kol Adonai, Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai, Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai, Yochol Ayalot, Vayechesov Yaro, Uvechalo Kulo, Omer Kavod, Kulo Omer Kavod. Adonai lama bu yashav vayeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai oz li'amo yiteh, Adonai yevorech et amo v'shalom. Yai yai da dai yai dai yai dai yai da da dai yai da dai yai 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 da da dai yai da dai yai da dai. You may be seated. Just before Rabbi Spitz made his glorious exit, that was a fun night. Oh my gosh. He turned to me one Friday night and says, "Oh, do you know, have you ever done Ana B'Choach?" And I said, "I've never heard of it," because it's not one of the psalms that is the sequence of Kabbalat Shabbat. But, of course, when Rabbi Spitz challenges me, I take up the challenge. So I learned this. I've not sung it many times, and this is the first time with the band. But if you see the translation on page 22, that's why it had significance for me, and probably perhaps why the rabbis chose to include it here just before we greet Shabbat officially. Anna, if you would please, may your mighty right hand undo the knots that tie us up. After a long week of being tied up in meetings, on Zooms, on the phone, in traffic, here we are at Shabbat, at the doorway of Shabbat. And we thank God for undoing those knots. We have to do it ourselves. Ana bakoach gudlat mincha tatir tzura kabel vinat amcha sagveinu tareinu nora ana bakoach gudlat mincha tatir tzura kabel rina amcha sagvenu terena nora nagibosh yudcha kevavad shomrein bachem tarim tzidchatcha tamid gomlein kachim kadosh chasim kadosh birov tuvcha na'el adatecha יחיד גאה לעמך פני זוכרי קדושתך שבתנו קבל ושמע צעקתנו יודע bakoa good luck yilicha tatir tzura kabelrina amcha sagveinu tareinu And as we're right at the doorpost of Shabbat, I invite my friend Rhonda Hurwitz to come up and light some Shabbos candles. All the way back there? Amen. Yasher koach. Toda rabah, Rhonda. So here we are to greet the Shabbos bride. Page 23. Yavava, finish Shabbat, Nikavila. Lechado de lekra, kalo Yavava, finish Shabbat, Nikavila. Shamor vezachor, bediborecha, hishmianu el המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. לקראת שבת לכוונך, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה דהרה. לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. איי איי איי, לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך אפיך, רב לך שבת בעמק הבכה, ורויח עמו עלייך אמרה. לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. לך דודי לקראת לו יבבה יבבה, פני שבת נקרא. Turn to page 25. We're going to change it up a little bit. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקרא. והיו למשיסה סוסייך ורחקו, קומי בולייך יסיס עלייך, אלוהייך תמסוס חתן על קהלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקרא. ימי ושמו תפרוצי ואת אדוני, תארי אצלי על יד איש בן פרצי, ואני שמחה ונגלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקרא. We rise and face the gate, because that's where the Shabbos bride, the security is going to let the Shabbos bride come in, right through that gate. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת You may be seated. Having greeted the Shabbos bride, it's time for a song for Shabbat. Page 27. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat. Let's do that again. שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ומונחה בלילות, עלי אסון ועלי נבל, עלי יגעות וכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בפעליך, במעשה ידיך ארנם. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. Page 28. At the marker. צדיק אדמר יפרח, יפרח, צדיק אדמר יפרח, צדיק אדמר יפרח, יפרח, צדיק אדמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, יזכה. עדותיך נבנו מאוד, לביתך נא וקודש אדוני, ליאורך ימים. And that is Kabbalat Shabbat. At this time, I invite those in mourning or observing a yortzeit to rise and join me in Kaddish Tom on page 30. Yikadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra kiutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mivorach Liolam Ulalmei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitalev V'yithalal Shmei D'Kudisha Brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya Chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimeru Amen. At this time, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome my friend Hal Hurwitz to be our teacher tonight. Hal.
Yashar Carl. Shabbat Shalom and Shabbat Shalom. When Carl called me Tuesday evening and asked me if I'd give the Devar Torah tonight, I said yes, pretty much automatically. And then I reflected on what had happened earlier on Tuesday, the very horrifying and shocking events of that day. And I had this Oi Gewalt sort of sensation, because I realized that this would take on a lot more of a significant and somber tenor than maybe I had originally signed up for. How many times in the last couple months, for those of us who have virtually attended Friday night services, how many times at this point in the service have we seen Rabbi Ben just sort of sit back, take a deep breath, and say, thank God it's Shabbat? I would venture to say that in 2022, it's been more often than not that he's done that because of what's happened during the week. And as far as this week goes, I think that holds true with more significance than perhaps other weeks. So I'm going to invite everyone here and everyone that's joining us virtually to do the same thing right now. Just before I get going, let's just take a deep breath and exhale and try and rid ourselves of as much anxiety and fear and apprehension as we possibly can. This is the first time I've ever done that publicly, I have to share with you. For as many times as Rabbi Spitz has done it, for as many times as Rabbi Ben has done it, I had never really gotten into that. But I knew tonight that I would, and tonight that I needed to invite everybody to do that as well. From what happened in Texas on Tuesday, it's natural that we have a lot of reaction, both privately and as a community, and then publicly. Publicly, we'll talk about a little later in connection with the Parsha, because publicly is what we want to do. We want to just shry. We just want to do something, whether it's within our community or whether it's to others, particularly those that might disagree with a viewpoint that we might have. We may want to do it with our legislators, but that can come second. First is that we have to take care of ourselves. You might remember that Rabbi Ben, after the Buffalo tragedy just, 10 or 11 days ago, maybe 12 days ago now, sent an email to the congregation. And his bottom line from that email was, if you are struggling, or if this tragedy has brought any personal trauma to the surface for you, please be in touch with us. And I know that were he here, he would say the same thing right now. Because we have to be comfortable with how we're dealing with tragedy first before we can go out publicly in the proper context and do it reasonably and rationally so that we can be heard. This reminds me of an interview, and I think it was a CSP interview, that was done with Rabbi Adam Kligfeld of Temple Beth Am. And I forget what the question was, but I remember his answer because it was quite striking to me. Most of us are familiar with one verse of Pirkei Avot that's attributed to Rabbi Hillel that says, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am for myself alone, what am I? Very popular translation. And we've often looked at that verse in a very binary fashion, right? Especially the second part, that if we're only for ourselves, who are we? It seems to be a self-critical question. Rabbi Kligfeld had a different response, though, and a different take on this verse that I'd like to share with you now. The first part is pretty straightforward. Imein ani li, if I'm not for myself, mi li, who am I? But the second part starts out, ucheshe ani le'atzmi ma'ani. And we've always translated that as, if I am only for myself, who am I? And as I say, in this self-critical way. But if you pick apart the Hebrew, and you look at this word, ucheshe ani, the u is and. Okay, that's fairly obvious. But what Rabbi Kligfeld would say is that the cheshe in front of ani doesn't mean if. He would say that it's from the word ka'asher, which means when. So that his translation of the sentence is, and when I am for myself, what am I? Completely takes that popular translation and turns it on its head. Because what it now says is that being for myself in trying times such as we've lived through this week, that's quite natural. In fact, he would argue that it is required before we can be of any benefit to anyone else, either in our community, our family, our community, or publicly. That to be introspective and say, when I am for myself, in those necessary times, it's quite proper and healthy and necessary to ask, what am I? And then we can formulate within ourselves these beliefs about what happened this week, and more importantly, perhaps, how do we remedy it? Now, how we participate in remedying it Rabbi Spitz always used to talk about the concentric circles of giving, and I believe that this is that same progression. So we start with this first circle about settling within ourselves, addressing the fears that are quite natural, addressing the anxiety that is quite natural. As a community, we're surrounded these days by fences, and we have guards, and God bless the shomrim that we have. We had a gala last Sunday that honored 3 people that were at the very core of our security committee when it first started years ago after the tragedy in Pittsburgh. As a community, we've sort of gotten used to this. And yet what happened on Tuesday, I'm sure shook us anyway. I'm looking at Rhonda, who substitute taught today, and we had a discussion last night about, I wonder what the policies are now with respect to what happens if there's an active shooter in the neighborhood. It used to be that there's a lockdown policy, but some say, no, just go out the back door and run just run. It's the first time we've ever had that discussion. So you have these concentric circles. How do we react personally? How do we react as a community? And how do we react publicly? But that personal part is still very, very important. And I would, on behalf of Rabbi Ben, repeat this email to everyone who's watching virtually now or is here with us in person. And that is, if there are issues that you do need help in discussing, if you have fears that you'd like to share with anybody, there are people here in the community, Rabbi Ben and others, with whom those discussions not only can be held, but should be held. And I would stress that as much as anything we may seek to do in a public setting as a result of pursuing our beliefs. Now, in a public setting is where the Parsha takes on some relevance. And I can only hope, Mimi, that whoever's leading the discussion tomorrow doesn't disagree with me too badly. The Parsha is Bechukotai, and we're very fortunate this year to be addressing Bechukotai all by itself, because normally, in the absence of a leap year, it's shared with Bahar. And it's Bahar, Bechukotai, and as we learned last week, Bahar talks about the Jubilee, and there's a lot to talk about in the Jubilee. And I think that that commentators are very, very willing to do that and not talk about Bechukotai, because Bechukotai talks about, it starts out very nicely. It says, God's speaking to the children of Israel, and he's saying, if you will adhere to my teachings, if you will follow my ways, these are all the good things that'll happen. And if you can picture a newspaper, that part would take up maybe 6 inches, and it's above the fold, but about 6 inches. But then comes the part about what happens if you don't follow God's ways. And if the good part took up about 6 inches, the bad part takes up about 6 feet in this parsha. Okay? Very, very damning language. And you leave thinking, well, since none of us are perfect, I mean, how can we possibly accomplish this? But what's often left out about Bechukotai is the real bottom line. And the real bottom line is back toward the back end of the parsha, where it says, however, for those of you that survived, the community at large didn't pass the first test, but you did. Then the community at large didn't pass the second test, but you did. And then the community at large didn't pass the third test, but you did. And if you're still around, I, God, am still here for you. And my promise was my promise that I made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You will be a nation once again. You walked away from my ways, and you will again. And as we know, in the post-wandering era, in the era of the prophets, especially Jeremiah, we know that the Jews did that, and we lost the majority of our community, so to speak. But there were those that did return, and God God's here to fulfill God's promise. There was an interesting article, and I'll show it to those that are here. I don't know if I won't ask you to do a close-up, Louise. But there was an article that I received in the email today from JTS. It was a commentary by Rabbi Gordon Tucker from JTS. And the headline is, "Scream about Uvalde, for God's sake." And this is the public response that I'm talking about. And Rabbi Tucker speaks a lot about Jeremiah and all the exhortations that we see from Jeremiah during the period of our forefathers' existence when we weren't our best people, we weren't our best selves. And he cites a comment that Rabbi Heschel made about Jeremiah, and I'll read a short excerpt from this commentary. Why would one scream into the wind that way? He's talking about Jeremiah. Abraham Joshua Heschel memorably described Jeremiah's voice, like that of other prophets, Carl, you'll appreciate this, as being one octave too high. What gave it that shrillness, that urgency, even given the futility of any expectation of righting the wrongs? Heschel's insight was both startling and profound. He argued that the special aptitude of the prophets was not the ability to predict the future, but rather the deep intuitive sense they had of the devastating effect that earthly injustice could inflict. That's really, that hit me between the eyes. I thought that was very profound. It's a different way than I've ever considered what the prophets were all about. I mean, if you think about prophets and prophecy and all the derivations of that word, you would think, okay, these guys can foretell the future. But actually, what they're doing is they're sounding the alarm of warning, knowing the whole way that we as a people have a mission. And that mission is expressed in various ways. The ahavta l'reacha kamocha, treat your neighbor as yourself. Or lagoyim, we will be a light unto the nations. We are our brother's keeper. I have a wonderful story about the first time that I had interaction with Rabbi Adam Greenwald about being our brother's keeper, but I'll save that for the next time that I give a Devar Torah. And in that light, I also came across a commentary on Bechukotai that was taken from the records of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, an organization that's devoted to preserving the teachings of Rabbi Sachs. He too talks about the good part having one paragraph and the bad part of Bechukotai having like 48 paragraphs, right? But his thesis is this, and I'll quote from the article, that all these sins, all these, I'm sorry, not sins, but all these condemnations that God talks about, it's a passage shattering in its impact, all the more since so much of it came true at various times in Jewish history. Yet the curses end with the most profound promise of ultimate consolation. Despite everything, God will not break his covenant with the Jewish people. Collectively, we will be eternal. We may suffer, but we will never be destroyed. We will undergo exile, but eventually we will return. And then here comes the punchline. Stated with this utmost drama, this is the logic of the covenant. Pretty powerful statement when you think about it. This is the logic of the covenant, the whole foundation of what we are all about. Unlike other conceptions of history or politics, covenant sees nothing inevitable or even natural about the fate of a people. Israel will not follow the usual laws of the rise and fall of civilizations. Bottom line is that Rabbi Sachs is saying, we have this mission as a people. And as long as we keep that within our sight lines, we will survive as a people. Might sound a little idealistic, might even sound a whole lot idealistic. But I think through times like this, when we want to shry publicly as to how in the world we believe we can solve these issues that have occurred in recent days, It's good to keep this in mind because I think that it keeps us away from the rhetoric, away from the labeling, away from the name-calling that probably damages our arguments anyway. Interestingly, the commentary goes on and says, this is how Abraham Lincoln envisioned the U.S. One writer described it as follows. We are a nation formed by a covenant. This is from Abraham Lincoln. By dedication to a set of principles and by an exchange of promises to uphold and advance certain commitments among ourselves and throughout the world. Those principles and commitments are the core of American identity. And it goes on and on. Oh, I shouldn't ignore the next phrase. Not only the core of American identity, but the soul of the body politic. They make the American nation unique and uniquely valuable among and to the other nations. But the other side of the conception contains a warning, very like the warning spoken by the prophets to Israel. If we fail in our promises to each other and lose the principles of the covenant, then we lose everything, for they are we. Likening the United States and the vision on which the U.S. was founded, which we know was based very much on biblical teachings, to those that we carry with us, hopefully every moment, as the Jewish people. So there is a time for personal introspection. There is a time for publicly, as I say, shrieing out loud. And I don't mean that critically as much as I do that I think sometimes is shrieing what's needed, as long as it's logical. Interestingly, this article by Rabbi Sachs was entitled "The Politics of Responsibility." Think about that for a second. I don't want to convey personal political thought. This is a Devar Torah in the middle of a shul, and I don't want to be characterized as taking sides, but I think that no matter what political stripe you are, what a beautiful title, The Politics of Responsibility. So this is our vision to ourselves, to our people, to our community, and even to our nation. And with that, I have a prayer for all of us, and it's a prayer that we recite multiple times a day. It's a prayer that Rabbi Ben ended with in his email after the Buffalo tragedy. We pray that the one who makes peace in heaven brings us peace on this earth. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, that he brings peace to all of us. May we live to see this prayer fulfilled. Shabbat shalom.
With freedom comes responsibility. Amen. Page 39A. We rise for our call to prayer. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Vorach Elam Va'ed. You may be seated. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, חי וקיים. תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. Page 40. עבד עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, ויורך ימינו, ובהם נגר יומם ולילה. מאהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. Page 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והעלו לטפחות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. והיה אם שמעת תשמע מצותי אשר ויאמר אליהם בשעתו ידבר. Adonai Elohechem, Amen. Turn please to page 43b, which continues on to 44 for an English reading. Let's read together. You proclaimed the covenant on the seventh day. You declared it and decreed it. We listened and heard it. You loved this day we inherited, delighting in its remembrance, and began its command with the word, remember, Zachor. From the time you bestowed it, joy filled the hearts of Jeshurun, the people you redeemed, securing the cause of righteousness. You exalted Shabbat as a sign between us forever. In 6 days your world was formed. On the seventh day you rested, and on this day, Israel, your people, rest. To honor your name, they sing songs of praise to the one deserving of praise, willingly accepting God's sovereignty. Then Moses, Miriam, and the people Israel joyfully sang to you. Who is like you, Adonai, among the mighty? Who is like you, adorned in holiness, revered in praise, working wonders? They sang Micha Mocha, Micha Mocha, Baelim Adonai, Micha Mocha, Nehedar Bakodesh, Nora Tehilot, Oh Sefer Lev, Nora Tehilot, Oh Sefer Lev, מלכות חרב ענך בוקר ים לפני משה זה אלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל. Page 45. Hashkifenu Adonai Elohim Shalom V'hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim Hashkifenu Adonai Elohim Shalom V'hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim Ushmor Tzeteinu Uvoenu Lechayim U'Shalom Me'ata V'ad Olam Ufroz Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha Baruch atah Adonai Haporeh Sukat Shalom Aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim v'al kol yoshvei tevel. We rise, page 46. V'shamiru b'nei Yisrael et Hashabbat la'asot et Hashabbat ledoratam berit olam Israel, Odi leolam, Yishesh yamim asa Adonai el hashamayim v'et haaretz uvayom hashvi Shabbat hayim Yitkadah Shemei Rabbah B'yama divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimiru Yehi Shmei Ravo mevorach Ve'alam ulam me'amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yabahar v'yidroman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar V'yitaleh v'yithalal Shmer kudesha Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbecha Tavenechemata Tamira b'yama V'meru Our silent Amidah, recited privately, pages 47 through 52. Ose shalom bimromah Hu yaseh shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael V'imru amen Yaseh shalom Yaseh shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al kol Yisrael Yaseh shalom Yaseh shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al kol Yisrael Yaseh shalom Yaseh shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al kol Yisrael Yaseh shalom Yaseh shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Page 54. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'yomad yivra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayed v'chol Beit Yisrael. B'agalo v'zman koriv v'yimeru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivorach, v'yolam v'ol me'amaya. V'yiporach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitroma v'yitnaseh, v'yadar v'yidalav v'yidalav shemei dekudesha, v'yelo mikol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'alma v'yimeru. Titkabaltz lot hon avot hon d'chol Yisrael. Kadamu v'hon d'vishmaya v'yimeru. Yehei shlamar Rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'al kol yoshvei tevel. v'himeru. Amen. Turn to page 56. We remain standing for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach radon hakol לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדם שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככהן ואנחנו מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגובה מרום מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך ולעבר, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated unless you're observing a yahrzeit or in mourning. This week, our community observes the following yahrzeits. Yahrzeit for Ruth Lapine, wife of Avram Lapine, Ethel Horowitz, sister of Martin Melnick, Rivka Markovitz, mother of Erica Susan, George Shekely, father of Pat Shekel, Ann Yeskel, mother of John Yeskel, Lena Siegel, mother-in-law of Julian Feldman, Henrietta Ruda, mother of Roz Rue, Morris Horwitz, father of Daniel Horwitz, Juana Seltzer, great-aunt of Carolyn Cohen, Claire Bennett, grandmother of Wendy Kottmeyer, Marjorie Horowitz, mother of Shana Shaham, David Vogel, father of Reuben Vogel, Elizabeth Goodwin, grandmother of Valerie Danzig, blessing Anita Heyman, mother of Ed Heyman, Richard Larrick, father of Alan Larrick, Barney Steinberg, father of Al Steinberg, Denise Schwartz, aunt of Ro Gruber, Gerald Klein, brother of Marcy Shalansky, Sam Ratner, father of Sandy Ratner, Sam Maidonic, father of Gila, Elsie Birkin, mother of Sam Birkin, Bernardo Haith, granduncle of Carolyn Cohen, Ludi Bloom, father of Michael Bloom, Sylvia Kaplan, mother of Linda Kaplan, and Vieira Haidt, great-grandmother of Carolyn Cohen. May their memories serve as a blessing to you all. Kaddish Atom, page 58. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yamad divra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru amen, yehi shmei rabba mivorach, v'yolam u'lolmei al-maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei d'kudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'alma v'yimru amen, yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'el kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'el kol Yisrael, v'el kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimru amen. I have been sent the announcements. Thank you, Phyllis. Mazel tov to Cantor Amy Robinson Katz on her ordination on May 30th. We're all excited about that. Yasher Koach, Cantor Amy. Thank you to the amazing efforts of the CBI Ways and Means Gala Committee. Woo-hoo. If you were here, you know how much fun that was. I and Nancy, we had a hoot. We really enjoyed ourselves. Yasher Koach to the committee. Our next Shabbat Under the Stars, I'm talking to you in virtual land. Come on over. June 17th is our next one. We hope you can make it live. We're few but fierce here on the patio. We'd love to have your presence and hear your voice. And finally, I just want to once again thank my friend Hal Hurwitz for such a thoughtful and timely devar. I needed that. That's all I can say. Thank you. On our way to dinner soon, we'll do Kiddush and Motzi together at the tables, but we'll sing Shalom Aleichem right here. Just because I love doing this with a band. I'm right there. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hashalech, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hashalech, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ay, ay, ay. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hashalech, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Nil Shalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ay, 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 Seichem L'Shalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mimelech, Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yai dai 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 Well, now that the service is over, please give a warm hand to Eric on percussion and Nick on the bass. Don't they sound marvelous? It's such great energy. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you on June 17th. Shabbat Shalom. Let's eat.